Hey guys, welcome back to the Overseers. My name's Proilios and I'm joined as usual by my co host Nightwing. It is, I think, our 23rd episode. I messed that up last time. Uh, but yeah, this is our weekly episode and we are going to be talking primarily about our predictions for the second week of the Overwatch League. But before we do that, there are a few things we want to talk about. Some of them are directly league related, and some of them are not entirely league related, but they are still pretty important to uh, the game of Overwatch or the state of the world. You'll find out what I mean by that soon. Um, but yeah, before we get into our predictions for week two of Owl, we want to start off by acknowledging the fact that Jeff Kaplan has left Overwatch. And how do you feel about this, Nightwing? I'm sure all of us, like all ardent fans of Overwatch, are pretty devastated by this news, and it's really hard to wrap our heads around this because we can't really imagine Overwatch without Jeff Kaplan, can we? What are you thinking right now with respect to this?
So Jeff is probably one of the last standing bastions that like the old, like quote unquote old Blizzard team would like consist of. And he was someone that spearheaded a lot of the creative operations for WoW, as well as then going into Titan to explore new opportunities. And he came in, and then that turned into Overwatch, which is the game we know and love today. Um, I think a lot of long-standing Blizzard fans were probably just banking on Jeff alone at this point, considering so many other people have left the organization ever since the merger with Activision. And I think it's an incredible loss, honestly, to Overwatch uh, on the development side as well as just the community side of it, because I think uh, Jeff was kind of the developer that we interfaced with a lot of the time, and the one that gave all the information, all the developer updates, uh, all the crazy moments at BlizzCon and other announcements. So it's a big loss to see that face change, and they've put in Aaron Keller as the new game director. That's
Mm.
correct, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Uh, as far as I know, he's kind of been second in command for some time, but honestly, not a lot of info on him. But I hope he can continue the tradition of just being more transparent about the development process, as Jeff was at times. Even though the level of transparency was criticized at sometimes, but it was still there. And I think at least that level of transparency I'd like to see continue forward. Um, I'm a little bit concerned about what this means for Overwatch 2, because obviously you can obviously put up an act, even if he was planning it from a longer time. But like for example, on in BlizzCon, you would probably remember that like he was really excited to share and discuss all of these new things coming to Overwatch 2. So uh, it's a bit confusing, but I'm sure he has his reasons. Uh, so yeah, good luck to Aaron, but seeing Jeff go is quite sad. Um, I wish we could just get like a final like send off Dino Flask video, uh, but I guess that's just wishful thinking. Good luck to Jeff wherever he goes. I think he's someone that can really provide a really good creative vision for and just execute really well for any development team. Uh, and I'm really excited to see where he goes next.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still kind of. It almost feels like um, Overwatch's identity as a game is going to sort of change with his departure from Blizzard. Uh, I do have some faith in Aaron Keller because he has been working with Jeff for almost as long as Jeff has been with Blizzard. So that does say That does tell me that uh, like they are hoping to somewhat at least maintain the vision Jeff had for the game, and I hope that um, Jeff left for the right reasons. Like there's been a lot of speculation that Jeff might be leaving Blizzard because Activision's kind of taking the company and the development of Overwatch and Overwatch 2 in a completely different direction that doesn't sit well with him. But I mean, all that is speculation because the reason Jeff has left has not been made public, and I mean, there's really no point in speculating at this point. But I just hope that whatever happens for Jeff for Overwatch 2, it just happens in in a positive way. There's everything goes well. I hope. Um, I wish like other than the Dino Flask video, obviously, I wish that we could have gotten like a final developer update from Jeff, because I think that's mainly where we like how we remember him, right? As the player base, we just remember him primarily through those dev updates, which we are definitely going to miss. And yeah, man, good luck to Jeff, and just really sad to see him go.
I want Jeff Goodman to start making developer updates so that he can still say, "Hey guys, this is Jeff from the Overwatch team."
Yeah, that would be something. That would get mixed reactions for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so now I think we can move on to the next topic at hand because we don't want to, although these are like really big topics, we don't want to like take up too much of your time since this podcast is primarily about the Overwatch League and this episode is about predictions. Um, let's move on to the next topic, which is I hope you guys have seen this, but Fearless from the Dallas Fuel recently said on stream that he and some of his teammates were victims of racism in the States. It's something really sad. Like the sort of divide that certain people look to create unnecessarily. It's just heartbreaking to watch. It's really sad that sorry, my throat. Yeah, just sad that people are being subjected to this. No one should have to face hate for no rhyme or reason. Um, but the primarily the awesome thing is that the Overwatch League officially acknowledged that this is a problem, and they made like a video about like just showing what Fearless, his teammates, and just the general Asian population is feeling in the United States, all over the world. Uh, and I think it's really awesome for the Overwatch League to do that because before this, I wouldn't have expected them to address something that wasn't within the direct scope of the league. So I think it's just really awesome by them. I will link the video in the description in case you guys haven't seen that. But just like good job Overwatch League because the reach that the league has is far more than any of us do individually, at least within the Overwatch community. So it's really awesome that they've acknowledged this, and yeah, this there's still good left in the world, I guess. Nightwing, anything you want to say about this?
Yeah, I think it's great that the league brought some light to this because uh, I mean this has been something that's been uh, there to a lesser extent in previous years. I think during the pandemic, this has kind of uh, just flared these sorts of emotions, which are honestly completely unacceptable. And it's great that the league is using its platform to bring light to what should be justly done. Uh, so, especially considering that uh, the vast majority of Overwatch League is made up of Korean nationals uh, and other Asian players, I think this is incredibly important to both the players and the audience to just really understand how important it is to stop this kind of discrimination. Uh, I think over the years, something that's great about the league is that in the first year, they were going for this completely like meat sport, like uh, professional and kind of detached entertainment almost. And over the years,
자,
they've accepted the
코로나가
kind of digital nature and uh, kind of accepted the people that watch it. And I think that's something that contributes to uh, them sending out a message like this. So I think really good on the Overwatch League team this year. All the new additions, all the new changes of roles that have helped this happen. I think it's hats off to them.
Mm-hmm. It's just like it's. I mean, it saddens me more than it angers me because it's like sure I'm mad at the people, but it's just sad that I think the fact that things like racism and sexism, all of these issues, like they are still so widespread. I think this needs to be addressed like at the grassroots. Like it has to start with educating people and educating them not just like as adults. This needs to start like in schools. You need to start telling people that hey, these are things that are not okay. Uh, and only then I think we will see some form of uh, wholesale change, you could say. Anyway, moving on to something a little more positive. GaeBullSsi, the Korean off-tank player from WGS Phoenix, has been officially signed by the Boston Uprising. And this is like, according to me, this is a pretty huge pickup because, first of all, Boston now has a fully Korean tank line in Stand 1 and GaeBullSsi. Not sure if they will get 100% playtime, although it's the obvious choice in my head. But yeah, GaeBullSsi, I've watched him play in contenders. His Sigma especially is just phenomenal. I haven't seen him too much on the other off tanks, but presumably he's very versatile and really good on all those heroes. So yeah, I think like I would have bumped up Boston a couple of spots in my power rankings had this happened before we made our power rankings video. But yeah, Nightwing, what are your thoughts on this? I'm sure even you're rating the uprising a bit higher now.
I don't know if I would change my power rankings based off of this, but I think GaeBullSi does provide a considerable upgrade to Punk, uh, and it just gives them a few more options. And uh, especially since GaeBullSi has been grinding on their academy team for a while, if I remember correctly. So
Mm-hmm.
it's a, it's a good pickup, and it's almost expected. Honestly, I was going to be quite surprised if they did not uh, happen like sooner rather than later. So it's going to be interesting to see how Boston perform with Wavell Sheehan. I'm not sure if they'll come out with him instantly, but uh, it's possible they have been scrimming internally with him for a while. So
Mm-hmm.
I think it wouldn't be completely surprising if they show up directly with Gable Sheehan and maybe like just alternate between him and Punk for some time, try to figure out what works at the league level. Uh, I think I would lean towards GaeBullSi, but we'll have to see, really.
Mm-hmm. And another thing for those of you that have forgotten is that Boston also has two other players from WGS Phoenix. That is Faith and Valentine. And even their coach, Lori, is from WGS. So this kind of just makes it a bit easier for this team to synergize. And I think they will require a little less of like scrim time to get used to each other once again. And yeah, like the Uprising now have a fully Korean lineup, so communication in general is going to be much easier for them. And excuse the noise in the background, it's like I'm in a house. That's gonna happen. But yeah. Let's then move on to the predictions, Nightwing. Oh wait, no, wait. Let's talk about week one first, cause like, ah man, the thing is, this week was just absolutely incredible. Uh, I I think this was by far some of the most competitive Overwatch we have seen in the Overwatch League, at least so early on in the season. We saw a ton of different teams unexpectedly go toe to toe with each other. We saw very diverse compositions being played in the same week. and I just had a blast watching, man. Nightwing. What are your general thoughts on this?
This week was actually just insane. Uh, so there were so many upsets going around uh, that I mean, we might look back and say, they aren't upsets, but from what people were ranking as what were the definitive power rankings almost for many people. I think a lot of people were surprised, especially by the Houston Outlaws, who beat both the Dallas Fuel and the San Francisco Shock
Mm-hmm.
uh, in a 3-2 fashion. And I got to tell you, for that particular match between Houston and Shock, I was molding. I was actually just molding in chat. Like I was doing a watch party with all of you guys. I think you left in the middle, but I was just molding the entire way through. Um, because it was really insane how well Django and Piggy were playing, and Piggy was super impressive. First, I think he completely almost dominated Hanbin in the off tank 1v1 uh, uh, in the Houston versus Fuel match, and then he also held his own against Choi Hyobin in Outlaws versus Shock, which was crazy. Django played a very good Ryan against Super, and in a last-ditch effort, they tried to put Smurf in for Havana uh, to kind of change up their playstyle a bit, but Django still prevailed. I think while I was still a bit confident in Piggy, like coming into the season, I was not so high on Django, but I think after seeing this performance on Ryan specifically, I can at least rate his Ryan quite well. Um, and So since we're on Houston, I'll also talk about their DPS. Dante, I think nobody really expected him to play badly. He's always been kind of the carry for Outlaws. He's just got a better team around him this time. And they've also got better coaching with Jungkook. So Dante is in slightly less pressure this time. Happy has actually been really, really impressive. Uh, we all rated him very highly for his like pure mechanical aim when he was on Guangzhou, but uh, and that has continued, and he's performed really well in both of these matches, and he even got the player of the match for one of them. He played extremely well, and I'm happy to see him compete against NA teams this time. Uh,
Mm-hmm. Uh,
in-
yeah.
yeah, I just want to go over Houston specifically, then we can get to the other teams.
Yeah, yeah, go on.
I thought Crimzo played really well as well. Uh, After his stint with Dallas and the drama with Decay, people were really putting him down, and it was quite impressive that he was able to really just compete very well with very good flex supports on either team. Um, Especially Violet and Twilight on Shock, which I thought was really interesting. Uh, I was kind of angry at the fact that Violet would die first every fight, basically. Um, but still, uh, also Juby coming in from collegiate. I think many people were low on this guy or just did not know what to expect, but he has been stable so far for Houston. And I think I just can't see this team really being bad uh, even if they're not at the very top, which I think they are honestly competing for if they've managed to beat Shock at the moment. Um, they would have to do really, really poorly or just get memory loss somehow to actually be bad. So they're a competitive team, and I'm really interested to see how the next weeks go for them.
For sure, and I think another team that impressed us in a similar way was the Chengdu Hunters, right? Because they pulled off a similar upset in the APAC region over the Shanghai Dragons, um, with a 3-0 score nonetheless. And I mean, if you look at it, uh, Shock and Shanghai have, like, even last year they lost a few games towards the beginning of the season, but still the fact that Houston and Chengdu were able to pull off these upsets by actually genuinely playing well. I think it's something really commendable, and I think it bodes for it. Like, it bodes really well for the rest of this season as well. Um, I think that things were a little bit different with Chengdu. Like, on one side you had the Outlaws, where I think individual skill came into play a lot. I think with the Hunters it was primarily about how coordinated they looked on a lot of these different compositions. This stuff, I think Gaga is the main reason that's been possible, because with Among, you just wouldn't have been able to play anything other than ball comps to a high level. And I think Gaga's so far looked pretty consistent, and so have I think all of the hunters that played, honestly. Uh, but yeah, I mean, even though not all of them popped off, I think they looked much more cohesive than they ever have before. And yeah, I think Houston and Chengdu have probably shown us the best Overwatch, like in both regions this week. I don't know if you agree with that, Nightwing. What are your
How
thoughts?
how crazy is it that Chengdu lost a map to Valiant and they lost no maps to Shanghai?
Yeah.
I mean, that is actually nuts.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
I think it speaks a little bit to the fact that Valiant aren't as bad as people actually thought, which we did speak about in our analysis video. But yeah, should we move on to our predictions for week two, Nightwing?
yeah, I think I'd just like to mention that, like, just peppered in some small opinions. I thought um, Mayhem and Titans match was interesting. I thought OG was actually not playing that well. Um, and it was mostly the rest of the team that kind of uh, helped them pick up those kinds of wins. I mean, Titans is obviously a much weaker team, but against someone like Atlanta, who they played against and got a 3-1, uh, I think OG was kind of the weak spot like we were expecting, but Mayhem still pulled through, which was interesting to see. Um, Toronto looks really good. Hisu is really popping off with this new team. And yeah, I'm happy to see Lastro do well. Uh, Fuel, their playstyle is something I really have to mention. They don't have XC, so they're not playing the hit scan, but they're finding their own innovative ways to play the game. And honestly, it's working quite well. I mean, even though they lost to Houston, they 3-1 Gladiators. Even though Gladiators aren't looking the best right now, it's still a very powerful team, and they've managed to find something that's completely not meta. Uh, they're just completely avoiding the mystery, and they're still doing quite well. Um, so I'm really interested to see what Fuel can continue with in the future weeks. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that's all I'd like to mention.
Okay then. Let's get on with our predictions for week two then. We'll start off with the NA region and then move on to APAC. Um, I think we've got a pretty tough week ahead because of how close these teams looked, and well, also because of the fact that we don't know how I think the six remaining teams are going to look. I think it's six, not sure, but yeah, let's get into it then. So the first match in NA is between the Paris Eternal and the Vancouver Titans, and I've predicted a 3-1 win for the Eternal, and Nightwings predicted a 3-2 win for the Eternal. Do you want to share your thoughts on why you think that is, Nightwing?
Okay, so why I would put Titans maybe one map above what you put them. I thought Shredlock's spine actually looked pretty good. He's basically the mainstay tank at the moment, Reinhardt, because people are not opting too much for the double bubble in NA from what we can see, compared to APAC, where they are actually going for Monkey Diva dive or sometimes double bubble. So in the scenario that they do play Ryan, I think Shredlock is honestly not that much of a weak spot. So that's there. And I also thought that during the showing that Paris Eternal showed us earlier, Dan was not looking too hot on the Reinhardt, honestly. He was kind of overextending and feeding a little bit. Uh, so even though he has done decently in contenders, I think this will be a closer match because of that uh, this main tank conversation going on between Dan and Shredlock. Uh, and I'm also not completely confident in the DPS for Paris. I think Onigod is quite good, but I think uh, Suna, while he did have a good performance in Steel Series, I think it's something that still needs to be tested at the Overwatch League level, like on actual broadcasts. And Naga, I think, is also remains to be seen doing well. So that's why. But I think overall, I still believe in the quality of the players from Paris a little bit more. Though I could definitely see this going the other way with the 3-2, with the Titans winning as well. Uh, but that's just slightly less likely, I think.
Hmm. I think I'm just a little bit higher on the Eternal setup. I think, although the tank lines of both teams are comparable, I think at this point, the DPS line for the Eternal is actually pretty decent. Uh, Onigod is someone like Onigod is a reliable player according to me. His hit scan, especially on the McCree and the Ash, is going to come in handy. They've also got Naga, who actually plays an excellent May, and although Teru also played a pretty good May this week, it's going to be pretty comparable. And in case Paris decides to opt for the double bubble, I do think Naga is one of the best echoes that we uh, have in the league this year. I'm pretty confident in that take actually. He could possibly be top five or top 10 if I mean, worst case. But I would trust the Eternal more in a double bubble setup, and they've also got like a tracer specialist in Suna. That's at least the role I think he will be slotted into. And even if they don't have like the accommodation for a tracer specialist, Onigod's a pretty good tracer, so you can just play him. So that gives them a ton more flexibility, and yeah, I just think the quality of their roster is a little bit above the Titans at the moment. So, and oh, let me not forget about Khan, who's actually really good mechanically, and yeah, I think he's just way better than Rolf at the moment. So, should we then move on to the next one? Uh, let's go on to the Gladiators versus the Spitfire. I have predicted it as a 3-2 win for the Gladiators, and Nightwings predicted it as a 3-1. And should I go first here, or do you want to take the lead?
Uh, yeah, I'll just say what I have to say. I think while Gladiators did look a bit weaker than we expected this past week, I think they still got a very solid roster going, and I think they're gonna just like VOD review it out and they're gonna figure something out. I think London does still have certain weaknesses, especially I'm not too confident in Blase, for example, and I mean, not too confident in hybrid either at the moment. There's only really shacks that they have on the DPS front, so I think it's not as close as a 3-1. It's I mean, not as close as a 3-2. It's probably a 3-1. If it goes to a 3-2, it's just going to be based off of the tanks for London playing really, really well. Because the tank line for Glads has been slightly stumbling at moments, uh, especially Muse. So if Hardy can just Rhine diff him somehow, then maybe London can make it more competitive. But I think otherwise, as an overall team, Gladiators should be taking this as a 3-1.
Okay. Yeah, so I do have a bit more faith in the Spitfire's tank line with Hardy and Molfik because they've played these like heroes to a really high level in contenders, and I'm sure flexing from like let's say the brawl style to the double bubble to even the ball sigma, honestly, if they want to play that on Busan as most teams have been, it's not going to be an issue for them. And I also think that this is one of the few teams that could run that Doomfist based brawl that we saw Dallas pulling out, right? And even though like a lot of teams are not playing that Doomfist, it's being run a fair bit in contenders. So they do have some sort of idea of how to play this composition, I feel, and they can pull it out maybe as a pocket pick if necessarily the May McCree isn't working. And I also think that they have an excellent flex support in Reaper who can actually uh, like pop off if possible. But like overall, I think the Gladiators have a significant DPS advantage, and that's what puts them slightly ahead of the Spitfire for me in this particular meta.
I
Uh,
think
yeah.
the thing with running something like the Doomfist comp that you're talking about is just that I don't have that much faith in the coaching staff, to be perfectly honest. Uh, I mean, Fisher is good. He has worked with them on British Hurricane, but I'm not too hot on Reprise, and he is supposed to be the head coach. So if it's something that Dallas are displaying, I think I have a lot more faith in Rush to teach that to his players properly in time. Whereas I'm not sure if the coaching staff for London can really achieve the same thing.
You said Rush. Did you mean Leafy?
No, I mean
Oh,
Dallas were
you're talking
playing.
about Dallas. Okay, brain fart.
Yeah,
Sorry.
Dallas were playing the Doomfist comp, right?
Right, right, right,
So
right, right.
Rush kind of uh, taught that to his players, right? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
or just help them set that up.
Yeah, I just
Not
misheard
exactly to.
something. I think. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So whereas I don't think London's staff will be able to do that as well. Deepe, I mean, he's solid. He still has to kind of prove himself after that rocky first week, but Uh, honestly, Gladiators could also play the Doomfist comp, considering they have Mirror, who's a pretty good
Mm-hmm.
Doomfist. So, uh, and they did actually play some sort of Doomfist comp in these preseason tournaments. So it's something they've got in their pocket, and they can pull it out if need be.
Okay. Let's move on to the next prediction, which is the Houston Outlaws versus the Paris Eternal, and that Nightwing has predicted it as a 3-0 for the Outlaws, and I've predicted it as a 3-2. Now, this is a bit of a hot take, but I kind of have the feeling like the Outlaws' success in week 1 is going to go a little bit into the heads, and that's like very plausible. I think it's more of a certainty than just a possibility. I think overconfidence is something that we can definitely factor in at this point. I mean, you beat the Fuel and the Shock, two of the highest rated teams in any in your first week itself. I think that could cause them to underrate Paris just like based off of their success. And honestly, Paris doesn't have like a bad setup overall like for this meta. I think the like I mentioned before, Naga is fairly versatile. He can play the Mei and the Echo to a high level, and Onigod is a pretty competent DPS. And also one more thing that I think a lot of people are not factoring in is that the Outlaws are going to have to play on artificial ping, which the Eternal have been scrimming on a fair bit. Uh, so I think it's going to be easier for the Eternal just to aim on that inflated ping, and the Outlaws probably don't have that much experience doing it. So we could definitely factor that in, and that's why I think it's going to be a close series. I don't know if it's quite going to be a 3-2, but I'm just putting it there to be safe. But yeah, I completely get why Nightwing has that 3 over there. I don't. Do you still want to like share your thoughts on why it's a 3-0? I'm still
I mean,
convinced. So
results are results.
yeah, yeah,
So
fair enough.
I I think Paris just has a long way to go before you can really put them that high. Even in like preseason tournaments, uh, I don't know if they were on artificial ping at that time, but they just did not look that good. I mean, London looked better than them. Gladiators obviously looked better than them. Boston looked better than them. And Houston looked better than all of those teams at the moment. So I don't really see how Paris will make it that close of a match, but we'll have to see really.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's move on to the next match, which is between the Uprising and the Gladiators. I think it's going to be a 3-2 for the Gladiators. Nightwing thinks it's going to be a 3-1. And I think I'll let you take the lead on this.
Okay, so I made this prediction before the GaeBullSsi announcement, I think. So,
Ah,
but even with him in, uh, I think it could actually be a 3-2, but I'm just gonna stick with the 3-1 because uh, I don't know. I think it's possible that their time with scrimming with GaeBullSsi might not have been that long, and I think Gladiators do definitely have that bounce back potential this week. Uh, After seeing what errors they're making, or uh, I don't know, something like that. But I think, yeah, it could definitely be a 3-2. It could also be a 3-1. I don't think Boston is likely to win, but uh, there is a slight chance that happens if Gladiators continue to uh, be as disappointing as they were last week. Because Uh, while they did play to the level of the shock, they also uh, lost quite badly to the Fuel. I mean, even though they did get a map. Um, so yeah.
Also, it's a it's a fun fact that the Gladiators have actually never won against the Uprising in the Overwatch League ever since season one. I'm not factoring that in by any means, but it's just like a little bit of trivia for those of you that didn't know. So if the Gladiators do win this as per our prediction, it would be their first ever win against Boston. So that's it. Let's move on to the next prediction, which is between the Justice and the Fuel. So Nightwing thinks it's a 3-2 for the Fuel. I think it's a 3-0 for the Fuel. Now, I think mine is more of a hot take, so I'll go first. So, as I had mentioned in like the very beginning, like during our power rankings, I rate the Justice way lower than most analysts because they have a really weak backline, and I think the supports are making a fair bit of a difference in this meta, right? Because you saw like even this week you saw someone like Crimzo make such a big difference to Houston's wins. You saw like how consistently Violet was playing on that support role when he was not dead basically, but when he was alive he was like he had a lot of impact. Um, I think even like essentially the flex support position is really important in this meta, right? And I have a feeling that Fuel just going to outdo Justice in that department, and it's also like well known at this point that the Fuel are using strats that no one has really scrimmed against because like XZ departed so late from their team, which is why Houston as well as the Gladiators struggled to beat them, and I think the same is going to happen with the Justice as well. Because like I don't really think Supreme is that great of a coach, as I've said before. I don't think he's going to be specifically prepared to face the Fuel. So yeah, that's why I think it's going to be a bit easier for the Fuel than most people think. Yeah, Nightwing, you can go on.
Okay, so I put a lot of stock into the DPS line and the tank line for Justice. I think that's where the strengths lie. I think I agree that the Fuel has a stronger support line probably, uh, but they are still trying to figure out whether to use Rappel or Fielder at times. So that is one potential weakness for them. And also, I mean, there is just the gaping lack of a hit scan, right? Why are the strats that Fuel is using, why are they not meta? It's because uh, they're not like as naturally strong just because of the balance of the game, right? So while these strats are working, and I commend them for doing that, I think the fact that there is possibly going to almost be a DPS diff in terms of just having an actual hit scan player for Justice that they do stand a chance. They have a really good rookie main tank coming in. They have a really good veteran in Fury as the off tank. Hanbin's not looking too hot, honestly, in my opinion. Uh, so I think Justice definitely have a shot. I think the difference in her opinion is kind of just based off of how we rank the Justice very differently. So I guess we'll just have to see uh, how that pans out. But either way, I think Fuel is still in a better position to win just because they do have better coaching and they've been showing good results. Um, but I think Justice still has a small shot at least making it competitive.
I also just want to add how excited I am to see the head-to-head matchup between Mag and Fearless's Winston's. I think these two players obviously really famous for playing the Zero, and it's going to be a blast to see which one actually comes out on top, both individually and in terms of which team wins the match naturally. But yeah, let's move on to the next prediction, which is for the match between the Outlaws and the Spitfire. I think it's a 3-2 win for the Spitfire in this context, whereas Nightwing puts it as a 3-1 for the Outlaws. Uh, do you want to go first on this one, or should I?
I just think results are results. I mean,
Fair enough.
if they've beaten the teams that are probably the best in the region, I think Spitfire does not really stand a chance, honestly. Uh, Spitfire could be good in the rush, but I don't know. I think the DPS is honestly lacking. Dante and Happy are just significantly better. Django and Piggy are looking really good. Crimzo and Juby are also looking pretty good. Uh, so I just don't see Spitfire winning this.
Okay. Yeah, I guess I just have more faith in the Spitfire. Like I mentioned before, versatile tank line, a really good tracer player in Shax. Like the possibility of playing that Doomfist brawl style with Blaze's Doom, and also like a really strong flex support in Reaper. I don't think you can underrate any of these players. I feel like it's going to be a really competitive match. Like if not a win for the Spitfire. Uh, I'm just, I guess, being a bit cautiously optimistic. But yeah, we'll have to see how this plays out. It's going to be an interesting one for sure. Let's then move on to the next prediction, which is for the match between the Uprising and the Fuel. Nightwing thinks it's a 3-1 for the Fuel, and I think it's a 3-0. Do we really need to break this one down, Nightwing? I think it's like, it honestly could be a 3-1. I think we both stand pretty, like, on the same level for this one.
Yeah, I think Boston will have a hard time winning this one, but they could take a map off just because of that gaping hit scan diff. Um, and like I said, I'm personally thinking London's not looking too hot, but I mean they did win the match, so yeah, I think Fuel is definitely in the just advantageous spot here.
Mm-hmm. Alright, so the next match is between the Titans and the Justice. I think it's a 3-1 for the Justice. Nightwing thinks it's a 3-0. And once again, I think it could very well be either of those. Should we break this down or move on?
Yeah, I don't think we really need to go over it. I mean, you read the Justice kind of low, and you still think it's going to be 3-1, right?
Oh, yeah.
I I would be very surprised if Titans actually pull through. Uh, but I should again mention I am pleasantly surprised that Sherlock is not playing terribly, at least in my eyes.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I'm not a like a proper main tank player, but he did seem to be doing well.
Yeah,
Uh, in Soji. So I mean they could take a map off, but I wouldn't be surprised if it just ends up in a 3-0.
yeah.
That's what I'm going with.
I think, like I mentioned this as well, but the Titans and the Justice, I think both of them are some of the weakest support lines we have in the league. So if you just compare those and like eliminate those, like just consider the rest of the variables. I think Justice evidently have the better DPS and tank lines, and that's what's going to make a massive difference in this matchup. Uh, yeah, and that's why it's a 3-1 on my end. But yeah, let's go on then, and we are now in the APAC region. I think just four matches here. Uh, the first one between the Hunters and the Excelsior. I have predicted a 3-2 win for the Excelsior. Nightwing has a 3-2 win for the Hunters. Interesting. Uh, I think you can take the lead on this one, Nightwing.
I think Chengdu is just looking really good with Gaga in, but I do also think that people are kind of underrating Yapeng and Bianca as a tank line, so they could definitely make this a quite a close match, honestly. And Chengdu matches are honestly quite unpredictable at times, uh, so I don't really know. And they have kind of a big roster. I think they do falter slightly when they put in someone like Jimmy in. Um, OneHP would kill me for saying this, but I think they don't look quite as strong uh, with that particular DPS lineup. They're almost kind of spoiled for choice. That said, they have performed quite well this past week, and they've beat the team that you would put probably in second place after Philadelphia, which is the Shanghai Dragons. They've beat them fair and square, just a knockout 3-0, right? Uh, so I think they're in a quite a good spot to beat the Excelsior. I am excited to see how well Guangwoo plays, especially considering that Hitscan is very strong right now. I want to see Feather do really well. I want to see what role Flora has in the team, considering that Guangdong is there. Uh, so it's going to be interesting to see what the InvaXL does, but I think Chengdu is at an advantage at the moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I actually agree with all of your points here. I think I'm just putting a little bit more faith into Wang Bung as a hit scan. I think that guy's got rookie of the year potential, and I think if he just plays his game, if the tank line for the Excelsior buys enough space for him, and the supports enable him, it's definitely going to sway the matchup towards New York. But I honestly think it could go either way because Chengdu have been looking really fantastic. So,
Oh, one thing I should mention, Ivy's May is really good. And May is being played a lot. So that actually does put that is kind of a plus point for NYXL. But that said, I think Chandu is still just looking very, very hot right now.
alright. Let's then move on to our next matchup, which is between the Philadelphia Fusion and the Hangzhou Spark. So, Nightwing thinks it's a 3-0 for the Fusion. I think it's a 3-2 for the Fusion. And I think I'll go first on this one. I just feel like the Spark have a ton of versatility on their roster this time round. They can play honestly any of the three comp styles that are being played in this meta. You have the rush comp with Ryan Diva. You have double bubble with Gushua being one of the best Winstons in the league. Uh, and you've also got Ball Sigma, which they can play if the need be. Um, and they've also got the DPS with like the flexibility to play all these heroes, right? Because if you want some like if you want let's say someone to play the Tracer, you've got Godsby. You've got I don't know if they are gonna put Architect or Sominsu on the Echo, um, but yeah, like I mean, all I'm saying is they have a ton of versatility, and I think it's going to be easier for them to sort of adapt based on the map and based on what the Fusion are playing as well. Um, so, and plus they've also got some game tape on the Fusion now, right? So they sort of know what the Fusion are going to run, and they've got a week to prepare for them. So I think that's also going to give them an advantage. So that's why I think it's going to be closer than we expect. Uh, yeah, Nightwing, you can share thoughts.
Okay, here's what I think. I think there is just a massive DPS diff between Philly and Spark, honestly. Uh, I honestly don't think Godsby and Sominsu are that good at the moment. Uh, Sominsu has basically been out of competitive play for like over a year at this point. Uh, and he's just like even when he was playing heroes that are just not looking too great at the moment. Like what do you even put him on? Like Reaper? I don't know. Um, Architect, he could be serviceable at the moment. Shy, I think, is unproven at the moment. At the owl level, which I'm interested to see, but I'm not too high on him compared to the absolute monsters that are Carpe and Rascal. Rascal is actually looking so good on the Tracer. It's actually insane. Um, Carpe is a nut on both Tracer and the hit scans. Um, this GPU's duo is just looking absolutely just amazing. Uh, Hotba and Mano are doing well. Uh, I think Liga and Gushue could contend with them, but I think the DPS diff again is just very, very huge. I think Alarm and Toby are playing quite well. I don't know if I would really put the flex supports from the Spark at the same level as Alarm. Uh, Toby has looked shaky in the past, but even then, I think IDK alone cannot really just like diff him to the point that uh, Spark does too well against them. So that's why I think it will be a 3-0. I'm just not that high on Spark. Uh, I think it's possible that they could take a map off of them, but I think Philly is just looking quite hot right now, and uh, I don't think it's too likely. So I'm putting it as a 3-0.
Okay, then let's move on to the next matchup, which is between the Spark and the Excelsior. Now, I've put it as a 3-1 win for the Spark, and Nightwings put it as a 3-2 win for the Spark. I think, yeah, it could go either way. Do we want to discuss this one?
So here, the only thing I'll really have to say is that I think the tanks for Spark are quite good, so they can take this match. Uh, I think Yapang and Bianca, while people are still kind of sleeping on them a bit too much, I think they still have to show themselves to be at the level uh, that Bushu and Liga probably are. So that's there. But apart from that, I think there's not much else I want to say. I think it's going to be closer than people expect. I think this 3-2 could, in the right situation, if NYXL's tank line actually looks quite good, this could be a 3-2 in the other direction. But I think Hangzhou is uh, at a slight edge at the moment compared to NYXL.
Hmm. Okay, then let's move on to the final match of the week, I think, which is between the Hunters and the Fusion. And I actually think the Hunters are going to take this one 3-2. Nightwing thinks Fusion's going to take it. It's honestly a really it's close to impossible to decide this one, right? Because Hunters and Fusion both looked pretty good this week, and we don't really know at this point whom the matchup would favor. Um, it's a confusing one for sure. I don't really have any particular reason to put the Hunters above the Fusion, except that they just look really coordinated this time round. But honestly, Fusion could just take it, right? Because even they looked excellent. Nightwing, do you want to share any thoughts on this?
So what I think is just that Um, it's just that the only real measuring stick we objectively have is just the LA Valiant, which is not that great of a measuring stick, honestly. Where Chengdu dropped one map and Fusion did not. So I'm not going to pretend like that's what I'm basing my prediction off of. I think I just thought the DPS for Philly were more like just impactful, and they looked very comfortable in their roles. I thought while Leave and uh, really whoever they would put in Jinmu or Jimmy, they looked good. I think uh, the DPS for Fusion are honestly just better. So that's where the main difference comes from. I think both teams can play very well, very coordinated. So that's not like Chengdu's strat where they just did team play a lot better than Shanghai. Uh, I don't think that same strat is going to work as well against Fusion because this team is also playing quite well and they have a lot of individual talent. So I think Philly is at an advantage, but I don't know. Chengdu like as most people know, Chengdu just has their own zone, their own like pocket dimension, which they suck teams into when they're in a match, and you don't know who's going to come out of that match alive. So we'll have to see. This is going to be an interesting one for sure, because if they actually do win this, then I think Chengdu, you'd pretty much call them the best team in the region, right?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, if they actually manage to beat Philadelphia, because they have squarely beat Shanghai. They're going to have a probably a close match against Fusion. The only other team you would probably that I would think of is just maybe match them against Seoul. Uh, and if they get all three of those Infinity Stones, I think you pretty much call them the king of APAC for the moment. So it's going to be very interesting. I'm going to be watching this match very closely, even though it's going to be quite late at night for me.
This is going to be late at night for you. It's going to be in the afternoon for us.
Oh, right. It says 3:30 a.m. here. It's
Yeah,
PT.
Pacific time. Yeah.
Well, if you're watching from NA, then it's late at night for you, but
Yep.
you have to watch this match. Or you can watch it when you wake up and just don't look at Twitter to see who won.
Luckily, this one's on Sunday as well because I'm working on Saturday and I won't be able to watch the Saturday matches live most probably. So
Honestly, with my sleep schedule, it might just be late at night for me because I don't know what time I sleep or wake up. So yeah, we'll see. But yeah, very interesting matches. Something I'd like to mention is that this week, I mean this season actually, because the number of games overall are lower. There's only 16 games per team, not including the tournaments. A lot of these teams are getting weeks off where they don't really have to play, which I think is quite good to recuperate, re-energize, especially during the kind of pandemic era that we're in, where players get to relax and refresh their mental. So Shock, for example, will not be playing this week, uh, and they'll get to see what kind of mistakes they make. I think that will really help them bounce back in the NA region. And for APAC, Seoul and Shanghai are not playing. So I think it'll be quite interesting to see how that 1 week off helps them prepare for the other qualifier matches for the May Melee. So yeah, we might just see a lot of these teams that have gotten some breaks come up with other new strats similar to what Dallas has been showing. Um, Maybe they decide to put Super on DPS this time alongside Violet. Uh, I think it's going to be interesting to see, and these breaks really help the meta develop and shift and change instead of just like hard locking the meta because no one has any time to experiment. This is something that's discussed a lot that when you have to just keep playing constantly week after week, you don't really have time to innovate. But this time, now that we've got many of these breaks coming in the middle of the season, uh, even if there are fewer balance changes, because the dev team is working on Overwatch 2, for example, the meta could still ebb and flow and change very naturally.
Yep, fair enough. And should we then just round things off? I think we've gone through all the topics we needed to cover. Um,
Yeah, let's go ahead.
what's your score? So you have 15 points, and I have 24. Wait, what? Are you
Yeah,
sure? Really?
yes. Addition,
I
maths.
I no, I thought we actually. Huh? I thought you scored more than me actually. Anyway,
I will this week.
yes, you yeah, you might as well. You could honestly.
Yeah. Spark is going to win a map on my watch
Who
against Fusion. They will probably win against Cell, but
Let's see. Let's see. The games are honestly way closer than we would have expected before. So who
yeah, I mean,
knows?
things are basically out the window, like especially for Houston. But it's a very interesting season. I think um, obviously some like high up teams have some slow starts in the beginning, but
Mm,
Uh, I think these upsets are quite big, and it's going to be interesting to see uh, are these like just some honeymoon phases at the beginning, or are these teams actually here to stay instead of these just being like one-off upsets?
mm-hmm. Yep. I think on that note we can round this episode off. Thanks a lot to everyone that's watched it till the very end. We hope you do all the stuff that helps the YouTube algorithm suggest our videos to more people. So like, comment, subscribe. I think the subscription is really important because it's going to help you like just have a keep watch on our videos when they come out, and remember to turn on the bell icon for notifications. And yeah, because I mean we get views, sure, but a lot of them are by non-subscribers, so we'd really like to increase the subscriber to non-subscriber ratio. And yeah, anything more to add, Nightwing, or should we cut the VOD?
Yeah, cut the vote.
Let's cut
Go
the
ahead.
VOD. See you guys. Bye bye.